What's up, everyone? I wanted to make a video breaking down a recent podcast because the same three people that listen to me ramble on all the time about the same things with food and nutrition and seed oils, especially, uh, probably are sick of me and say I should just make videos. So that's what I'm doing. The podcast was on Rogan. Whether you listen to him or not doesn't really matter. The podcast had a lot of beneficial information as far as health and how you should look at seed oils, how you should look at olive oil, how you should look at mitochondrial health and cholesterol, all things that they're sick of listening to me ramble on about. So I'm going to put it out into the ethos and see where it goes. Anyways, the first topic that was interesting and I wanted to dive into a little more is at 137 in, they talk about smoke point on olive oil. And for the longest time, they tell you, well, you can't cook with olive oil because the smoke point makes it this crazy poisonous gaseous fume thing. Doesn't work that way. So there was a study in 2018 in the Acta Scientific Nutritional Health that specifically looked at different seed oils and extra virgin olive oil in cooking. And what they derived from that was specifically extra virgin olive oil yielded low levels of polar compounds and oxidative byproducts, in contrast to the high levels of byproducts generated from seed oils or for oils such as canola oil. So they did a specifically, they cooked these oils in fryers, much like a restaurant would, and they found that the extra virgin olive oil held up better long term and also in reuse. I wrote a blog about this, dives into a little bit more. But w- why is that important? Because oxidation is what causes a lot of these things that they're talking about with mitochondrial dysfunction, how it causes inflammation, and especially when it comes to cholesterol, oxidized LDL and very low dense lipoproteins are what you should be concerned with, not just cholesterol. So the fact that olive oil oxidizes less at high heats, and mind you, they were cooking up to 400 degrees with these oils, and olive oil held its ground, and these other seed oils not only oxidized but released more trans fats. And as we know, trans fats are terrible and all the other things. But uh, yeah, the olive oil held up the best. So don't be afraid to cook with olive oil. It's fine. It's going to even hold up better. Yeah, there's some breakdown at some point, but they cooked it with it at 400 for 6 hours or more. So you'll be all right cooking your asparagus in your pan in olive oil. It's all right. It's way better than using canola oil, which another point they bring up is they talked about the name. So where'd the name come from? It's actually Canada low acidic oil. So this was originally rapeseed oil, which obviously not a great marketing scheme. So they changed the name to Canada low acidic oil. And essentially they just crossbreeded it and found out that it could grow in insane amounts of pesticides. So you could still grow this plant after spraying gallons and gallons of glyphosate on it, and voila, you still have a plant. So it's crossbred to this mutation Frankenmonster thing, and then you put it through a hexane bath and chlorine solvents and all the other things to get this crazy Canadian low acidic canola oil instead of rapeseed oil. So either way, that's how that all came about. And don't be afraid to cook with olive oil. It's actually extremely beneficial. So later they go on to talk a little bit about olive oil itself and how they found out that seed oils are actually not great for cardiovascular health and cholesterol. That's a whole nother topic to dive into, but they kind of hint towards, is olive oil, what we make it out to be? And I would say yes, to a point. It is beneficial because I've done a bunch of research on it and specifically how it can reduce inflammation, but you have to be cautious because they will cut, not so much anymore, but olive oil was known to be kind of controlled by this crazy olive oil mafia and all the things that the news said or whatever. But it was shown that They would test olive oils that got imported in, and even olive oils that came from the United States. They would test them off the shelf in production, all this stuff, and these olive oils were either cut with seed oils to lessen the price for the manufacturing, and then they jack up the price, claiming that it's extra virgin olive oil, but it was cut with seed oils. And then also, if you get a not so quality product that sits in a vat for a long time, and then they put it in a plastic jar that has no protection against UV and all the stuff, it's going to break down and oxidize. So just ensure that you are getting a high quality olive oil. And there's all kinds of different certifications and stuff like that nowadays. Just get a glass bottle, because PFAS chemicals leak into fats very easily in plastic. So I would get a high quality olive oil that's got a certification on it that it is pure, tested, and I would also get single source olive oil, because that's where you see a lot of the different areas where it cut in seed oils. So if it's a product of 13 different countries, you don't really know. If it's product of California, product of Italy, more likely than not, you're getting what you are buying, because now the regulations are so high on these different olive oils. So look for the stamp of approval from different olive oil associations. Get a glass bottle that's dark glass bottle, and you're more likely than not going to get benefits from it, because they are highly effective at lowering oxidative molecules in the body. And what are oxidative molecules? It's essentially just a molecule that goes crazy and has a missing electron on the outside and starts wreaking havoc, bouncing all around looking for another electron, because it wants to be a whole molecule. So antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin E add that electron back to the molecule and then make it chill out, so it doesn't turn into a reactive oxygen species and spark this crazy inflammation cascade. So later they go to talk about how LDL cholesterol is directly affected by seed oils and oxidation. And that's because when we think of LDL cholesterol, everyone thinks it's like this demon. It's not. It's necessary in the body, and it essentially carries things that are it carries products through your body from the liver out to areas of the body. That's other proteins, that's hormones, that's fats that need to get distributed out through the body. And HDL, the good cholesterol, is like a snowplow, and it brings everything back to the liver for cleanup. So they think, oh, because you have a higher LDL indication, and according to certain studies, you have high LDL, that's bad. That's not necessarily the case, because what you need to worry about is what they discuss is oxidized LDL. And they dive into a little bit of how it becomes oxidized. But if you're eating a bunch of carbs, processed carbs, bunch of sugar, think of carbs just as sugar. So breads, pastas, crackers, pretzels, all the nonsense that's low fat, and wheat thins, Triscuits, whatever. That stuff is all just think of that as like a sugar cube. That's what your body thinks of it. So it takes it to the liver. Liver looks at this like excess glucose as, I don't know what to do with it. So it turns it into triglycerides, which are technically a fatty acid, 3 chains. And so then it releases those triglycerides, trigs, we'll call them, releases the trigs into your bloodstream. Then you get a panel from the doc, and they're like, oh, you got high trigs, you got to quit eating cholesterol. Not how it works. Because if you eat pure cholesterol, first of all, like 80 to 90% is synthesized in the liver. Secondly, if you eat cholesterol, your body's going to go, oh, I don't need as much, and downregulates the promotion of cholesterol. So the only correlation that cholesterol has to the diet is the fact that when you consume too many carbs, it turns it into triglycerides, and then very low, very VLDL, very low density lipoprotein. And how does it do this? It goes through a process called de novo lipogenesis, which is new fat creation. So it takes this excess glucose, changes into this 3 fatty acid chain, triglycerides, packages up in VLDL for a carrier protein, and then sends it out into the blood, therefore reflecting on your lipid panel that you get from the doc as high triglycerides. It pushes that into the bloodstream, and those are essentially carriers for LDL cholesterol. Why does it do this? Well, because it needs to push it out into the blood to store somewhere because it can't store any more glucose, sugar. So you take that and you put it into the blood. And on top of that, you've eaten inflammatory foods like processed carbs or processed foods in general, seed oils, all these things. And then the LDL, who's your firefighter going to put out the fire, gets blamed for starting the fire. It's like, no, they're going to help. They're trying to get everything pushed out to the body where it needs to go because the liver is saying, I have too much. I need to get it out. I need to take this to the cells. So LDL isn't bad until it becomes oxidized. And when it becomes oxidized, it's primarily from glucose in having too much inflammatory food, specifically excess carbs. It becomes oxidized because there's kind of two things they talk about, like endothelial health, which directly correlates with atherosclerosis. And atherosclerosis is like hardening of the veins. And how that becomes a thing is because you get microtears, you get very small holes in the endothelium tissue, which is your vessels. Then your macrophages and other immune system responses come to heal that and essentially thickens that area and can cause a plaque buildup. But the more dangerous part is the kind of flowing or viscous plaque, which would come from oxidized LDL particles getting eaten up by macrophages, creating a foam cell. And that foam cell then creates like the snot that gets caught and can break off and throw a thrombus into your heart and then cause you to have a heart attack. So, well, why does it do that? Is because when your endothelium becomes damaged or the particles become oxidized, the body thinks that that is a threat or a damage and it needs to go fix that. So how do you reduce this? Well, there's a study that came out, actually a meta-analysis that just got done last year into this early 2025 that took pre-diabetics and obese people and put them on a keto diet. And oh my God, fat. No. It actually reversed a lot of tissue damage in the endothelium itself. And then also they do what's called a flow mediated dilation, which essentially you put a BP cuff on. The BP cuff scrunches up your veins or your vessels, and then they release the cuff and they take a measurement of how quickly and how much it dilates back. So that's telling you, how hardened up is it. And they do it in your brachial artery, and it gives an indication of your vessel health. So that improved in this keto diet for the pre-diabetics and obese people. Another huge marker was hemoglobin A1C was down like 0.5% or more, which is a big jump. Like going from 6.0 to 5.5 is a huge jump for hemoglobin A1C, which is the 90-day, essentially sugar crust to your red blood cells. That's how they measure that. Fasting insulin went down and fasting glucose went down. So fasting glucose would be sugar in your blood when you don't eat anything. So if that's high, it's kind of a snapshot in time. That's why hemoglobin A1C is better. But then fasting insulin is a good one because it shows you how much insulin is in your body when you're not doing anything. If your cells become insulin resistant, then more residual insulin is going to sit in your blood and in your cells. So either way, going back to what they were talking about, they dive into some really, really good stuff. I think the important thing would be is the research on seed oils and the argument of they're good because they lower LDL cholesterol from all the TikTokers out there and nutritionists. By the way, all the nutritionists, you're funded research from for that stuff. Probably shouldn't say that. We'll cut that part out. So all the nutritionists out there that get your information from your education, you should see maybe where that research and education is funded by before you go touting how good seed oils are. The thing is reducing seed oils is obviously it's not like an argument that you can make if you have any I if you have a minimal understanding of how things work in the body, and everything works at the body at the molecular level. It's not like, oh, I had one piece of bread today, so I'm good. It's like your body doesn't look at it as one piece of bread. It looks at it as like, this is a tiny little iota of thing that I need to use down to the molecular level. So the most important thing would be understand what your nutrition is, and then understand how it works in the body so that you can have the wherewithal to talk to your doctor, talk to your friends, your family, and make the decision for yourself what you want to do for your health and how you want to go about it. If you want to do seed oils, yeah, that's fine, but there's a lot of research that says, yeah, maybe skip that. And I would just suggest that you arm yourself with information.